Hey, this is Mark from Casting Crowns, and you're listening to Dispatch Radio.
All right, with me now is Guy Hatcher, nicknamed the Legacy Guy, and we're going to discuss his great book. It's called Your Future Reflection with the subtitle, How to Leave a Legacy Beyond Money. Good morning, Guy. How are you?
Good morning, Brandon. I'm doing fine this morning.
All right, let's get right to it. Now, the Legacy Guy label, the book has got that in the subtitle. Give us your perspective on the legacy that we're talking about.
Well, when I talk about legacy, I'm talking about really what we're going to leave to the next generation. And what I've come to understand from being in the financial services industry for 26 years is working with thousands of families is they have this desire to pass on. They just really don't know how to do it. And every family is going to leave a legacy, either positive or negative. So what I'm trying to do in the book is give them a process and a tool to really understand the legacy that I believe God is calling all of us to leave to our next generation.
What does it mean when you're saying to leave a legacy beyond the money? What are we trying to get at?
Well, basically, what's always interesting is I've done numerous estate plans throughout my career. Is everybody always comes to me and they say, "Guy, will you help me move the stuff?" Stuff being the house and the assets and the brokerage accounts and all that kind of things to the next generation. But what is always interesting is when I then stand beside them at their deathbed or in their later days, there's this desire to really hand something else off. And I couldn't really quite understand it until I went on a journey myself a couple of years ago, Brandon, and I realized it really has nothing to do with the stuff. It really has to do with the heritage that they received from their parents. It has to do with the values that they have lived their life out, the relationships that are important to them, having a vision that they've lived their life out, and then passing a vision on to the next generation. So it's really about this core things that God has put within all of us really to hand that baton off and be effective with that. So the stuff is really secondary.
And I think it's really very powerful that you say that, because that's the day in, day out aspect of our lives and how we impact our children. And yeah, we get paid, we might set some money aside, retirement account, we pay off our house, but it's that legacy and all those little things that you do to educate and help your children, not only when they're young, but even when they get older, when they get married, have their own kids. And a lot of times we don't focus on that, right?
No, we don't. I mean, the problem is when we get into everyday life, I mean, what I always talk about is the speed of the world. It is so frightening fast that we get on the freeway and we miss our exit numerous times, but we got to stay up with the speed of the traffic. And the reality is when you really slow down and say, why did God put me here? And what type of impact is He calling me to have as a father, as a husband, as a business person, as someone in a church body? That's a different way to look at it, Brandon. And it really gets back to the core of what I think God has given us through the Abrahamic covenant, which is really the scripture I'm taking out, as I go through the book, is I'm just living the life of Abraham and how God worked through him in that covenant and how we can have the same power of the covenant in our own family tree.
Let's get to that covenant a little bit deeper, because I think that's such a core revelation for me as I was studying this and looking at this, and the way you exposed it to in a different concept with legacy. In other words, what is Abraham's legacy? We kind of take for granted in the way the passage is written, but when you start to contrast that with Lot, you really hit something to me that was very, very powerful. The lone wolf syndrome kind of becomes very exposed, in my opinion. So speak on that a little bit.
Well, in the illustration I use in the book that you're talking about, Brandon, I was a year and a half into the book before this hit me, and I parked on Genesis 12 when Abraham actually got called out where his father had passed away, which was in Iran, all the way up to Genesis 25:5 when they buried Abraham. And I parked within those chapters and really spent a lot of time. So it was really a revelation when I was reading one day, and as I was writing, I finally woke up and said, "Wait a second." Abraham and Lot, of course, the story goes that they had the same numerous, people that stayed with them and worked for them, servants, cattle, and of course, everybody knows, that Abraham gave Lot the right to choose. He chose the green grass, as I referred to it, to the east, which was Sodom and Gomorrah. He goes into Sodom and Gomorrah, and of course, we all pretty much know the story of, the Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, Lot coming out. But what really hit me, wait a second. All these herdsmen, all these servants going into Sodom and Gomorrah, They called him master. Not one of them followed him out. And so the illustration I'm using is, here's Abraham, the father of all nations, the father of faith, the one that really our lineage comes from. And he's got a very deep family tree that we all have started our little orchards off of. And here's Lot that had nothing. And it's a great illustration of a positive legacy and a negative legacy. And I see that lived out in a lot of families right now, Brandon. It's really sad, but I do see a lot of people that take a lot, the lot choice, and that's what they actually leave to the next generation, nothing.
Talking to Guy Hatcher, he's the author of Your Future Reflection, How to Leave a Legacy Beyond Money. And I tell you, Guy, you hit me on the side of the head with a 2x4 when I was reading this, only because it was the second 2x4 I got in the same week, because Mark Hall, the lead singer of Casting Crowns, has a new book that's accompanying their album, and the subtitle on his book is about digging deep and reaching out. And it's basically the legacy story here is starting to really just keep coming at me, and it's like, look, you need to get educated. You need to constantly be in the Word. You need to constantly be studying and preparing yourself. But if you're not doing anything, what good are you? And if all you're doing is doing and doing and doing, and you're never really educating yourself and working, it's just an amazing partnership that God has there. And once we embrace that, like you say, it can impact every aspect of your life, right?
It really can. And, something that's really come into my heart in the last couple of months. And, of course, I'm a certified financial planner, and I deal with wealth and money management and all that kind of stuff is, I'm looking at the different economies we can live our life through. We can either live our life through the world's economy, which is, the investments, the speed, you got to make money. My identity is tied to who I am and what I do and what I dress and where I live. Or I can go to God's economy, which is totally different from that. And so what I'm trying to do, and this really just hit me about 60 days ago, Brandon, I'm really trying to get up and say, God, I choose to be in your economy today. And it's a different way to look at your choices, because now it's not being measured by the world's standards, it's being measured by God's standards. Some days I do pretty good with it, and some days I don't, and that's life. But the cool part is, at least now I've come to acknowledge it, that there are two worlds, and I can have a choice of which world I want to live through and out.
How do you approach the advice to folks who are really very fearful? We're in a really difficult economic time. A lot of folks have varying opinions on our economic recovery or not. And how do you approach people's fear with this? I mean, obviously, especially with a Christian, you want to try to be a responsible steward with your money. And then, as you say, you want to plan not only for your own retirement, but you want to plan for something for your kids. And how do you quell that? How do you really get to the root of what people really should do?
Well, and that's a phenomenal question. And I'll give you a great example. It was 2008, and as we went into 9, I write a monthly newsletter, and we've got several hundred people that read it. And I was just, the press is always bombarding us with the negativity, and they're out there to sell basically the fear factor. And I'm trying to say, look, this is not our God. Our God is someone else. And yes, the economy is in a downturn. And I just go back to basics, are you allocated? Do you have balance, and try not to live out fear. But I'm going to tell you, 98% of everybody from 2008 to 2011 were in fear. And all you can do is continue, in my own mind, and every person I was talking to every day was living that out in their life. And I basically kept telling people, I choose not to think that way. I choose to think that God is sovereign and God is in control, and also come to the place, God doesn't need my money. And the reality is, Brandon, I don't need my money. If you go to, Matthew 6:27, when he says, if I'm going to feed the birds of the air, I'm going to feed you too. And so what I've got to do is continue to take myself back to truth, and I just try to glean that and share that with different families. Some of it helps, some of it doesn't, but all I can do is be consistent in what I believe the Word is saying about He is my God of faith, and that He is my God of hope, and that I can actually rest in both of those even during tough times. And it's a journey. Once again, I think that's the biggest thing I'm learning is it's just a journey for me as it is for everybody else.
We hear a lot from different financial folks with a Christian background, and Dave Ramsey comes to mind, but you really touch on something that's very, very close to that, and really to me is one of the hardest things, because it's where you can push away from the table of the world and really rely on God. When you start talking about tough love, and really being honest. Really, we always complain about our money problems. We complain about this, but hey, listen, maybe you really shouldn't be eating out 3 times a week, and hey, maybe you, shouldn't be going to the movies twice a month, and maybe you, definitely shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. But that's just as hard, if not harder, for Christians to hear than it is for the worldly folks, right?
Oh, it totally is. It totally is. And and Ramsey's got a great ministry, and there's other guys like him, and I've really encouraged clients that I've seen, trends and patterns to go through that. Here's the big issue that I always try to coach from is it becomes awareness. You have to become aware of your habits and what drives you to spend money, what drives you to lust over money or the things of money. And the reason, Jesus preached so much on money, he knew what it was going to do to us. I mean, our whole economy, that is our God. Our whole economy is based upon the money. You see the greed, running rampant throughout our whole society, and it's all about money and identity. And the only way to have strong identity is to have money. That's what the world says. And I'm around very successful business owners, and they struggle with that because down deep, they hurt, and the money doesn't take care of the pain. Only the relationship with Christ can take care of the pain.
What do you tell to pastors that are struggling with keeping that message out there? Because I think a lot of folks have backed away from that. They're not. Well, let me say it this way: the Bible speaks about money as much, if not more, than any other topic. Yet folks are kind of afraid to kind of get dirty sometimes.
Well, and the reason here's what I believe. I believe there's a dysfunction from the pulpit to the people in the pew, because in reality the church needs capital. And what I've seen, and I'm not picking on any denomination or culture or a certain church, what I've seen, because I've been part of different bodies and I've coached and mentored in different churches and everything, is I've seen it coming out of the pulpit, the view of money is not proper, but at the same time you got a dysfunction from the people in the pew back to the pulpit. They think that this is my life, I should be able to control it, and you really don't need to be in that, Pastor. And that is really what I've learned about money with people. That is the one aspect of their life they think they can control. And when you start taking the word see and driving it to control, that means you really have gone into an ownership mentality versus a stewardship mentality. And then that's kind of it's a slippery slope from then on, Brandon, because for me, and I'm not perfect. There are some days I get stewardship and I live it out. And there's some days I put that owner's cap back on because it's fear-based, and it's a struggle. And I understand the truth, but it's just how can I continuously live within the truth versus living within the fear and the control issues?
Yeah, I think for me the first step was just acknowledging that God's not abandoning me, that difficult times and trying to dig myself out of the hole is not an easy process or long process, and it's okay that I'm in the hole. God's still with me in the hole. Don't get discouraged, and continue to just keep staying on the path, praying on it, and He'll continue to keep opening doors and surprise you when you're least expecting it. Usually is the case. So,
and I agree, and that's where I think I go back to the word awareness, understanding your patterns in your relationship with money, what is healthy and unhealthy. Going to the movie 3 times when we're already $100 over budget for the month. That's a good example. Okay, do I really need to be doing that, and what's driving me to go do that? Do I want to make myself feel better because I'm kind of down, I'm tired, whatever those issues is? And also coming to the awareness that God is in control. And so I think that's a good way that I always try to coach people, is aware of your emotions and your feelings, and also your faith in the God that we know will always be there for us.
One last thing here before we wrap up. I know we're running a little bit long on some time here, but I want to get to the younger generation because schools are moving even further away from money management, future planning. I mean, I know there's a lot of emphasis to just try to get some of our core educational standards up to par, but do you have an advice? What do you tell parents, and what do you tell these young folks that are just not getting some of the information they need? I mean, let's face it, my generation did get Rule of 72. I guarantee no one's getting it now. So, so you start to see, man, this is going to be a really stronger uphill climb, more difficult, because we're not even educating. Because when we were in school, we had business classes. You learned how to balance your checkbook. These things are gone. And I think it's more dangerous now than ever to try to help get these kids on track.
Well, and I think as a parent, and Brandon, I've got a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old. I got two sweet girls, and I've started them right around 7. I went and got one of the buckets, save, spend, and give. And so I've started them in the principles of money. I've set my oldest one down. She's starting to help me balance the checkbook when I sit down and do bills on the weekend or whatever. I mean, it is my responsibility as a parent to train those children. And I've had parents say, I don't understand. There's great material out there. Ramsey's got great stuff for children. And there's other ministries out there, Crown and different things like that. You can go online and find, get that material in, and sit down and go through that with your child. From a school perspective, a great point there. I agree with you. In the public school today, that is pretty much gone. Even I'm in a private school. I'm on the board, and I just brought up to our headmaster, hey, I want to go ahead and start teaching these principles. We're going to lay them in line starting this spring. I just really felt a heart on it, and so a lot of churches have this ministry going on. If not, talk to your pastor too, or even bring material in and start teaching your children on your own.
Fantastic advice. The legacy guy, Guy Hatcher. We love talking to you. We'll definitely need to have you back, get into some other topics that are coming out of this book and some of his other work. This book is called Your Future Reflection, How to Leave a Legacy Beyond Money. We'll have links to all that. And Guy, it's been great to get to know you and talk to you live for the first time. And I can't wait to catch up with you again.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate your time.
Have a Merry Christmas, my friend. Be safe.
Okay, same to you. Bye-bye.